It's DNC week, and among all the grandeur of Obama making dick jokes about Trump and Planned Parenthood showing up with vasectomy vans, which is not creepy at all, the DNC has released the official Democrat Party platform for 2024. Of course, we can reasonably expect it to be anti-gun because Biden has been anti-gun, and the White House is promising that Kamala will basically be Biden the sequel. But the platform that they released is extreme by any definition, including stripping federal protections for gun makers. Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I have had a super busy this week and I would not have been able to stay on top of my to-do list without my Blackout coffee. They are a great family-owned roaster focused on traditional values and a love of the Second Amendment. They even have partner roasts that donate to some of your favorite gun rights groups directly, which will become even more important if gun control wins the White House. So to help support the channel and your rights, go to blackoutcoffee.com/libertydoll. Tim Walz has echoed the famous and far from the truth phrase that no one wants to take your guns, because more than half of the new gun control proposals coming out of the DNC involve taking your guns. According to the platform, the Democrats are running a campaign based on universal background checks, assault weapons bans, standard capacity magazine bans, and those three are nothing new, but we can add to that list federal mandatory state storage laws, more red flag laws implied at the federal level, repeal of the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act, increased funding for the ATF, increased funding for the FBI to conduct more background checks, and increased funding to the CDC under the guise of a gun violence epidemic being a public health crisis. That one has been covered in another video. But the TLDR there is that the declaration was based on data from the Trace. Most of these proposals are unconstitutional and all skirt around the fact that both Harris and Walz have talked about taking guns in the past. They might try to deny it now, but Harris herself talked about mandatory buybacks in the past, and Walz thinks that ARs and M4s are the same thing despite being a combat veteran. By the way, I guess there is some kind of angry letter from a bunch of actual combat veterans in Congress about stolen valor or something. It's performative, but it's something. We can also expect them to double down on getting the ATF to follow through on criminal illegal orders. And I will tell you why. As the Second Amendment Foundation pointed out, during COVID, Walz had a police force going door to door and shooting people with paintballs if they opened their doors or went out on their front porches during lockdowns. They were still on their own property, and he gave the police orders to shoot them. He had no qualms in ordering this or finding people to carry it out. Again, non-lethal rounds, but still. We already have knock and talks that have turned out badly and raids that ended up with dead gun owners. Imagine when someone who ordered their constituents be shot, even with paintballs, just for being outside. That does not bode well, my friends. And that is what's scary about this extra funding for corrupt alphabet agencies. And like, corrupt isn't just a, right-wing talking point here. We have the proof. Now, as far as the PLCAA goes, this is a law that has prevented some of the arbitrary lawsuits against gun makers and helped get that lawsuit that Mexico tried to bring against U.S. gun makers thrown out time and time again. By the way, it just got thrown out again. I have lost track of how many times at this point, but Massachusetts, surprisingly, also just threw it out. Now, this law protects gun makers from frivolous lawsuits when a third party decides to use their legally produced, lawfully sold product in a bad, illegal way. It basically is saying that you cannot hold a company responsible for an unrelated individual's actions, aka common sense. But according to the Democrat platform, it actually protects the gun industry from getting in trouble for funding crime and makes them immune from taking responsibility for their criminal actions. That's not at all how it works, but sounds good to voters who don't know anything about the actual federal law and how it works in practice. And that is the key to politics these days, my friends. No matter how you cut it, gun control is a big part of the left's campaign this year. Again, in a year when the Republicans decided to slim it down. Yes, they did have something about the broad defense of the Second Amendment, but they used to go into a lot more detail, and this year they kind of nixed it. It's an interesting choice. Anyways, again, gun control is a big part of the left's campaign this year. We can only hope that they don't get the chance to make it a reality. All right, folks. That is it for today's video. You guys know the drill for the algorithm things. I'm not gonna bother telling you every time. Unless you're like 5 years old, you've been on YouTube long enough to know. And you've probably been here long enough to know. So, I will say, as always, thanks for tuning in and happy shooting.